Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn session on the principles and tools of neighbourhood working. Thanks for taking the time to come and join us. Neighbourhood working is becoming an increasingly important part of how we deliver our ambitions through Progress for Unity. It's about working in a way that's more person-centred, place-based and focused on doing things most importantly with our communities rather than to them. But I suppose, what does that mean for you and the role that you're doing? So today's session is designed to give you a simple, practical look at what that means in reality. We'll explore how neighbourhood working is helping us connect data with local insight, how it's shaping the way our services are delivered on the ground, and why it matters to us all, regardless of where we work. So I'm Mike from Internal Comms, and I'm delighted to be joined by Rosie, Claire, and I'm hoping Sean's joining us in a second as well, but I'll go around to introductions in a minute. They'll be sharing their experience, their insights and examples of neighbourhood working in action. So they'll help bring the concept to life and show how this approach supports our work with residents and communities across the borough. So just before we get into it, an open invite to be involved and present in a session through our behaviours. So although we're not face to face, you can kind of show that accountability by keeping cameras on so we know who we're talking to, and just double checking that your mic's on mute, because sometimes it slips itself off and before you know it, you said something that you shouldn't do or was picked off. So just double check that mic is on mute in the top corner. Feel free to use the chat as well and ask questions as we go through. The team will be there to respond to it, and we'll also be able to have any of those questions a bit more in detail at the end and chat through some of those responses. And then we've also got the reactions button at the top. So next to where raise your hand is, there's a little smiley face. So if you want to give that a test, press react, give me a thumbs up or a heart or something along those lines, and react to the content as we go through. Fab. Thank you very much, everybody. So, quick reminder as well, you don't need to use your lunch break to attend these sessions. They're personal development within work time, so make sure you are getting your lunch as well. You're not doing this as part of your lunch break. Also recording the slides, so we'll share them afterwards along with the presentation itself. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Rosie, Sean and Claire to introduce yourselves and get started. So Rosie, do you want to start with yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Rosie, Neighbourhood Reform Manager, so working in Claire's team. I'll hand over to Claire.
Hi, thanks. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Claire Burnham. I'm Assistant Director for Neighbourhood Reform and Skills at the Council.
Hi, everybody. Sean? I'm Sean, Performance and Insight Unit Manager. Sorry I was late. Wrong link. Apologies.
It's all right. We got you there in the end. You were our only panic. So, yeah, I'm glad you've joined us, Sean. Mike, thanks for that introduction as well. That was brilliant. Really appreciate it. So we're really looking forward to spending some time with everyone this afternoon just to talk about some of the tools we've been developing around our missions. So we're kind of going to do a few things. I'm going to take you through the principles of neighbourhood working that we've developed. We're going to then hand over to Rosie and Sean, who are going to show you some of our new neighbourhood profiles. And then there'll be some scope at the end for questions. So I know when there's a lot of people on the call, it doesn't kind of feel like you can do that, but we really want that engagement. So, you know, we will try and make sure there's a chunk of time at the end for questions. And I like Mike's idea, keep giving the thumbs up. We're hoping not to get too many thumbs down. We will try and make it as interesting as we can. So yeah, really good to be here and speaking with you this afternoon. Are you pressing the buttons, Mike? Perfect. Yeah, so just to frame, obviously, everything that we do in terms of our delivery, right, not just across the council, but across our partnership in our communities, is absolutely geared around our missions, our mission 1 and our mission 2. And obviously connected into that is our 6 ways of working. So, you know, whatever we're delivering, we need to be sense checking, as you know, to ourselves, thinking, right, how does this connect to the missions? But some of our staff have been reflecting back to us around particular mission 2 in terms of neighbourhood working. But we're not quite sure what we mean anymore by neighbourhood working. So obviously in the past we had neighbourhood teams, we had 7 service delivery footprints, and people are saying, is it about that, or is it about the culture and how we work? So actually what we were tasked with doing is trying to develop some tools that will help you as a staff group just to kind of reflect on your own practice and think, oh, this is what neighbourhood working means to me in my role. Because as Mike says, it doesn't matter what role you do, all of these missions, as you know, connect into what you're delivering. So that's what we've tried to do, and that's what we're going to take you through today. So we've developed it. It's a 2 sides of A4 sheet around the principles of neighbourhood working. I'm going to take you through that. This is our first proper outing. So we went to the adults managers session and with a draft, and they had a little look at it. We made some tweaks. So this is very much around work in progress. So we've got a document that we're going to share, but we want your feedback and we want your input as well to see, is it useful? And then, as I said, the neighbourhood profiles that Sean and Rosie are going to share, again, will hopefully be a practical tool to help you deliver our mission 1 and 2 alongside our residents. So if you want to move on, Mike, please. Yeah, we're all right to move on from that. So yeah, and this is what the guide looks like. So I said it's a side of A4. This is the first bit, and then I'm going to take you through 6 slides as well that gives the detail. But when you see it as a document, when we circulate after the meeting, it is just the 2 sides of A4. So just going to try and take you through the simple guide in terms of working alongside our neighbourhoods. And as we said previously, this isn't about teams or structures. It's about the culture and the way that we work, and obviously embedding that 6 ways of working. So it is about putting people first. It's not about looking at systems. It's about looking at place. It's about looking at our neighbourhoods and working alongside. So not doing to, but working with. And as I'm saying some of this, there'll be lots of people on this virtual room thinking, well, that's what I do already. That's brilliant. And hopefully you'll find some of this familiar as we're going through. I suppose our task was trying to bring that together to ensure that everyone's on the same page. But we do want to hear about your learning as well and how that connects in. So if we're kind of really working alongside our neighbours, we know that we've got a chance of making those real long-term changes. And that's one of the things we need to remember, that our missions, it's a 10-year movement for change. So some of these things will be quick wins, but actually changing the way that we work alongside our residents in the neighbourhoods, in those smaller neighbourhood footprints, this is going to take time. So we've got to be a bit patient as well in terms of this is a movement for change. It's not a strategy that we want sitting on a shelf. And so in terms of neighbourhood working, what it is, what it isn't. So it's about trying to shift the power and decision making closer to where people live. So instead of us making decisions about communities, how do we really work alongside to co-design, to deep listen, and to make those choices and those kind of decisions together? And build on those strengths. We're going to go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. But what strengths already exist in the places across our boroughs? We know there's lots of them. And it's trying to look at that prevention. So let's not wait until families, communities find themselves at that crisis point. How can we start to work alongside communities so they're thriving places, so we don't see that kind of escalation and need for our more specialist services? And all the time, as we've got all these different services delivered in the neighbourhoods, but if we all have that vision of, right, we're working to our missions, that might blur the boundaries sometimes in terms of how we work, but that'll be a positive thing, and we need to hold that mission-led kind of delivery absolutely at the forefront of what we're doing, and really kind of think about that power shift as much as we can. So what isn't neighbourhood working? As I mentioned at the beginning, this isn't about us kind of looking at teams in game. We're going to split them into 7 or 14 or whatever, and we'll have a housing officer, a social worker with everyone like we did previously. This is kind of more nuanced, because what we're doing is actually building out from the strengths that exist. So it's more about how we work and that culture and making those connections than kind of parachuting a team in to a particular area. There were some benefits to that in the past, but we're kind of trying to take this a step further. And it's not about naming our existing work as neighbourhood work, and it's really about thinking about those missions. And it's not about us doing more everywhere. So I think in the past, sometimes we've overreached as services. So this is about us saying, actually, if there's already strengths there, where do we need to be invited in, and where can we kind of take that back step? But again, I'll go into more detail on that as we go through. And as I said, if we kind of really can link our 2 missions in everything we do, we're trying ultimately to ensure our neighbourhoods are thriving, both socially and economically. We're reducing those inequalities, we're providing that equity, and ultimately then services won't need to engage as much with our communities. We'll be there to be invited in when things do escalate. Oh, I think we've got a bit of echo, so I don't know if people can turn the mics off. Thanks. Okay, Mike, next one. Okay, so I'm going to take you through now the principles that we've pulled together. So the first question isn't what services are missing, as I mentioned before. It's looking at deep into those smaller hyperlocal communities, what skills, relationships and leadership already exists. and what do people already do with for each other, and what does that mean about how kind of we're going to work alongside that neighbourhood. So you might have a neighbourhood like Higher Falls, an example, where we've got a really strong VCFSE organisation. We've got lots of people there who have got a background in kind of working alongside people as individuals, but also in groups. So actually the offer that we might then bring into that community might look very different to another community where maybe they haven't got so much of that infrastructure, or even if they have, that infrastructure might look different. So it's about kind of gauging from what we find as a strength there first. But that will mean that we'll have to really kind of get to know those people in that community, both the VCFSE organisations, who are often quite rooted there, but also get to know the residents as well. So if we start from that, and then start to think about, actually, if we think then about what we can deliver and what we can offer, how do we shape that together, and how do we invite services in that the actual community will feel will be of benefit. And as I said in the past, what we've tended to do is say, actually, this is what the data is telling us in an area. So this is the plan that we're going to make as professionals, and then we're going to come in and work with the community. And as I said, we've had some success from that, and it was very, very well meaning, but we haven't shifted and changed a lot of the inequalities that exist across our borough, which is why we're driving our missions. So we're trying to kind of flip that on its head and start with a conversation. So use the data as a guide, but have that conversation of, well, we might know that asthma's high in this area, or there's a high percentage of people who are obese, but what are the community solutions to some of those challenges? And let's work together to try and enable that. So we're doing that as trusted partners, working together and trying to build that capacity in the community, as opposed to us just coming in as services. I suppose kind of that thing around, it's not within our gift to empower communities, but communities need to feel empowered, and we can enable that by kind of sometimes taking a back step as services and saying, actually, where are those strengths, and how do we then support those strengths and work as more of that team? But as I said, this tool isn't something kind of a tick list that you go through. This tool that we've developed is about a tool that you can reflect on. So once we kind of circulate with you, it's about saying, actually, how is this applicable to my role? Am I going to do that as part of self-reflection myself? Do we take this into team meetings and really have the conversations to see how we're really connecting to those missions? So that's what it's meant for. Next one, please, Mike. Okay, so again, this builds from what I've just been talking about in terms of building social connections. So ultimately, you know, the utopia is that our communities are very thriving. There's created job opportunities. People have really positive mental health. People are living their best lives. And ultimately, we don't want services to need to be kind of coming into our communities a lot. But we know we're not at that point yet. But I suppose that's kind of needs to be our mission. Whoever's working alongside communities is, how do we really build the social infrastructure that's there so we can take that back step? So we're only needing to come in, you know, when things do escalate. So we already know, again, within our communities, there's some brilliant community groups, volunteers, informal support networks. There's brilliant shared spaces. Some people are more comfortable going to libraries, some go to community centres. We've got our Be Well centres, family hubs. We've got such a rich kind of ecosystem of buildings and delivery. So this is about how we utilise those to really build that capacity within our communities. So if we can build that social connection, if people can really feel part of that community, then people feel that kind of they feel empowered, don't they? And they feel then that they kind of can live the best life without necessarily relying heavily on some of the services that we deliver. So that involves us then investing in our community organisations. So again, a lot of the investment, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that's coming in, we're trying to redirect into the VCFSE sector, knowing that actually those are the sectors that are really trusted in our communities. And if we can invest more money, they will have that long-term sustainability and really be able to develop those relationships further in communities based on trust, because we know that that will make the difference, and that will be a constant and help to really build that social connection in a place. I think building social connection is also the deep listening. and really understanding where there might be sometimes barriers in place that prevent us doing the right thing. So again, all of our staff across the council and the broader partnership, there will be a time, if you're a front-facing officer or even in a back office function, where you've been able to see, I want to do this, I want to do the right thing, but sometimes it can be the system or a process, a policy that could be a barrier to you doing the right thing. So we're not saying all of a sudden don't be legal. Some of those things will be statutory duties, but just because they're statutory doesn't mean to say that we can't have a look at them and look at doing things in a different way. But some of them could be barriers and rules that we've actually made up as an organisation. So that is part of the neighbourhood principles as well. It's giving staff that permission to say, actually, that doesn't feel right. That feels like a barrier that we need to have a conversation about. And so you've got the permission to have a conversation with your teams about that, to bring that back to us as senior leaders and say, this feels like a barrier to doing the right thing in the community. Please, can we have a look at it? And if we can do that all collectively and together, then hopefully we'll be able to break down some of those barriers and make it much better for people working in our communities and really being able to do the right thing. Because at the end of the day, it's why most of us come to work, isn't it? Is that we want our communities to be thriving and we want people to have the best lives, but sometimes that system does prevent it. So Progress for Unity, the principles of neighbourhood working is around us trying to look at those things and you know, work better for our communities. Right, next one. Okay, so the next one is around stepping when needed and stepping back early. So again, you know, again, in a very well-meaning way, sometimes I think as professionals, we can see where there's a challenge or a problem. And it's sometimes within our nature to put our capes on and fly in and go, yeah, I want to help fix this. Because that's kind of a natural response sometimes, isn't it, to do the right thing. But actually, if we start with what exists already in that community, where does that family or that individual already have a support network, and try and build from that, you know, really get to know people in that neighbourhood in which you work in or connecting to, then we can often get a very different solution to some of the challenges that our residents are facing, if we build on those strengths first and then try and work through those barriers together. And again, I think sometimes the system doesn't help with this. So we might often have a number of different professionals working alongside a resident or a group on very different things. Whereas actually Progress for Unity for us and stepping in and out is about saying, actually, I was going to go in to look at that one thing, but is there someone else who has already got a relationship where we can really kind of work together? So we're not kind of overwhelming communities with a number of different people, and we're trying to kind of look at that trust-based relationship-based practice, building on those strengths, but then taking that back step when we're able to, and actually seeing that back step as success and definitely not failure. So again, that real shift to kind of community power and working alongside our communities. Next one, Mike, please. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one because Rosie and Sean are going to take you through our neighbourhood profiles, but I'll just give you a brief update as to why we've kind of shifted on here. So I know I've looked down the list and a number of people on this call have been here a number of years. So some of you will remember probably 6-8 years ago when we used to have neighbourhood profiles, and we had 7 profiles based on a service delivery footprint, and we used to have a PowerPoint presentation that had like a 50 slide deck of doom in terms of the data, and it told you all the bad things of living in that area, and you'd have probably looked at that PowerPoint and thought, crikey, I don't want to live there. But obviously we know that what comes with that data, there's also a flip side, a load of really positive things happening in that community. So we've tried to flip it on its head, not look at kind of 30 to 50,000 population, but look more at those hyper-local areas, 3,000 to 5,000. And Rosie and Sean are going to take you through a very different approach where we actually look at what's working well as some of the things that are challenging. So I won't say any more on them because they'll start putting the thumbs down on me because they need to, I don't want to steal their thunder. But yeah, we'll go into more detail on that, and it'll be just great to get your input and your views on what we're developing. There will still be kind of 7 footprints in terms of some of the health data, but that will then connect in to the ones that Rosie and Sean are going to share. Thanks, Mike. So lead through shared missions, not service targets. So neighbourhood working needs a different leadership approach. So often, as we said, each of our services will have different targets. But actually, if we think resident first, if we think family first, if we think community first, often we can kind of move out of those silos to do what's best for that family, individual, community, while still meeting our targets, if we can really listen deeply and work together. So again, I know a lot of people will already be doing this, which is brilliant, but this is about how we get that consistency right across the council and ultimately the partnership. So we've got that flexibility. You as staff have got, I mean, I know Mike started with our behaviour, you've got that permission to be creative, to be accountable, to be creative and courageous, to be kind, and to really kind of look at what's best for our residents. Again, listen deeply, do the right thing, and that will give a better kind of outcome for our residents, and it'll make them absolutely feel like they're not being overwhelmed by lots of different services. So how can we work flexibly across those teams, across those boundaries, by really kind of looking at place, neighbourhood, children, families, communities first? And again, building on the networks that exist. So we know that residents have lots of strengths, VCFSE organisations. How do we start there? And then look, and we used to say, I think, wrap around our services, which we're changing the language on that as well, because that feels a bit paternalistic. So as services, we want to be invited into communities. We want communities to say, actually, this will make a difference here. So really kind of shifting that power to listen deeply in terms of what communities feel will make a difference, and us as services being invited in, and kind of really looking at that shift of working flexibly, working locally, and working outside some of our traditional boundaries. And I think if we can do that, I think a lot of staff will feel kind of really liberated as well, because we speak to so many staff who said, oh, I wanted to do that bit as well, but I couldn't because, you know, someone else was doing that. So how can we really create that culture where we're doing the right thing and alongside our residents? Next one, Mike, last one, everyone, and then I'm going to hand you on to the profiles. So again, a practical guide in terms of the final one is around use integrated services to support communities, not replace them. I've probably talked already about this in the other ones. But it's around focusing on those community-led solutions where we can, bringing specialists in when needed, not starting with that as a default. And really, if we start to build those relationships with communities, listen deeply, reinvest back in our VCFSE, that should create more thriving communities from that preventative element. So we will then reduce the need for crisis kind of intervention. Build on our community spaces, as I've already said, so people can connect and lead with those. If there's barriers around accessing or delivering from our spaces, work hard to kind of break down those barriers. And again, you've got the backing of all the senior leaders, your team managers, to really start to do that. And overall, it means working alongside, as Mike said at the outset, not doing two, working with, and trusting our communities. You know, they live and breathe our neighbourhoods. They know our residents have got those trusted relationships. So build from that connection and look at that kind of invitation being made through people who residents trust. You know, people for years have said, oh, some of our residents are hard to reach. And we always challenge that and say, actually, it's not the residents that are hard to reach. We know where the residents live. It's sometimes the services that are hard to reach. So how can we think of a different and creative way to make sure our services are delivered in a way that people feel comfortable accessing them? And often that'll be taking them to the neighbourhood where people live and where people feel comfortable. And often that trust is already there with our VCFSE providers. So how do we connect with them to try and reach those residents that might not kind of traditionally engage with us? So again, the permission's there, the opportunity is there. And if we can do that, obviously we will then build those stronger neighbourhoods by co-designing, working alongside, listening deeply. So I'll pause there. That's kind of our practical guide in terms of our principles. Mike, I'm just looking at the time. I'm thinking, should we go through the neighbourhood profiles as well and then take questions at the end, just so we've got enough time to get through that? I think that might be the best plan.
That sounds sensible.
Is that all right with everyone? But if you're thinking of questions as I've just gone through that, or any reflections, because as I said, this is, we've drawn it up, but we can change this, so we want your feedback. Just start putting things in the chat and then we can take them as questions. But I'm going to hand over now to Rosie and Sean, who are going to take you through the new profiles. Hopefully that was useful. Thanks, Rosie and Sean.
Thanks, Claire. So before we get into the demo, and this is going to be the technical moment of truth as Sean shares his. Oh, well done. That was easy.
Very smooth.
So yeah, I just thought I'd go through a little bit to add to what Claire's already said about the neighbourhood profiles. So we really think and hope this will become a tool to when you're starting to look at these places and areas and want to know what the strengths are. We hope this will be the start of the conversation. It won't be everything. Nothing will replace conversations with residents and the community and businesses, but it's just something to give you a bit of a helping hand. So this product focuses, as Claire said, on hyperlocal neighbourhoods, particularly communities that require targeted support. So we've got 14 neighbourhoods, and then pride in place areas as well, just to kind of help us with the monitoring and evaluation over the next 10 years. And Claire will go, if we've got time, a bit into pride in place at the end. And it brings together information about local assets, services and data, but also the really important part of this product is that it can capture the strengths and voices of local residents and communities as well. So we want to create a shared and trusted evidence-based and a single version of the truth that supports professionals, but partners and communities too, to better understand their areas, plan effectively and work together. So it does complement our wider health data profiles, but this is kind of more than a data product. The whole point is the insight and the real kind of insight that you get from it. So we've done a lot of what this is and what this isn't, but what it isn't, it doesn't duplicate existing resources like the Our Town directory or the Old Community book, and it doesn't focus solely on the challenges or deficits within a neighbourhood. As Claire's kind of outlined, we want to look at the strengths, the rich variety of strengths we've got across the borough that are all going to be different depending where you are. And just a final point before I hand over to Sean, it's not intended to replace local knowledge or lived experience, and it's not meant to be a static product. So the idea is that this will be ever evolving. The genius way that Sean has set this up is that it will automatically kind of get the latest data and insight. So yeah, it just acts as a start of a conversation, and hopefully we really don't want it to just be sat on a shelf. We want you to use it. So this is very early kind of stages, so any feedback you've got, and there will be opportunities to kind of form part of a testing group, but we'll get onto that at the end. So over to you, Sean.
Thanks, Rosie. Before I start, I will just say there's some audio in this Power BI report. So sometimes that doesn't always come through on Teams. So I don't know if you can see this, but at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll have a little volume section. Just make sure that that volume is on. If you can see my screen there, hopefully you can. And that should then allow us to show you that audio. Okay, so basically you'll see a link. This will be on our council's internet page, and that's purposeful so that communities can access this, other partners can access this, but also our workforce as well. You'll be met as you click that link, you'll be met with this screen. And basically you've got a drop down box that tell you where do you want to go in terms of what neighbourhood, but you can also select postcode as well. So if you weren't sure what postcode the neighbourhood falls into, type that in there and it should automatically jump to it. You've also got a tutorial that will take you through how you navigate this report as well. We'll say this is still very much at prototype stage, and we're always looking for ideas to improve the product as well. Okay, I'm going to make an executive decision today, and I'm going to take us to Marsh Green. So if I select Marsh Green, and it should automatically switch, and then click Let's Go, it'll take me to this menu. Top left-hand corner is Community Voice. Purposely the first bit that you see, because we think this is the most important part of those profiles. If you click on videos, it will take you to a video of what the resident feels it's like to live in Marsh Green. One of the things that Claire did say is that the data can be a little bit reductive at times and actually doesn't necessarily give you a full sense of what it feels like to live in Marsh Green. Okay, moment of truth to see if actually the audio works on this. Let me just press play and we'll play the video of Eileen.
I'm Eileen and I live in Marsh Green. I've lived here for 60 years and I wouldn't live anywhere else. Everybody I know from being the childhood to being to adults, they all still talk to me. You know, they say morning, they're thinking I say morning to them, but I don't get ignored. Like everywhere else, there's been changes and things, but for me personally, it's the people and the friends who I've known for years and years. And I've never, ever had the urge to move. Got an African lady lives at the back side of me for 14 years. They respect their elders, thinking, she's always called me Grandma. And she says, morning, Grandma, are you okay, Grandma? And on the other side of me, it's been a shared house for a long time. So I've seen different people, different youngsters, and met some interesting people. The library means a lifeline to me, because I never came into the library for years and years when my husband was alive. I wouldn't be there. And we did everything together. But when he passed, my sister persuaded me to come in the library. And from then on, I've never looked back, because they made you feel like a family, like a thing. If you want anything doing or you need anything and it's bad, they'll ring you up and say, do you need anything from shop? Or if I don't come down, they'll be wanting to know why.
So each of the neighbourhoods will have a series of video content, and Rosie talked about these profiles being live with content updated constantly. We're very much looking for services as well to provide content into us, and through Rosie as the conduit to that. She's always looking for new content, and we can have conversations with Rosie to add stuff in. I know there's certain services who are providing additional content for us as well. So the idea is that every couple of months or so, that those videos are going to start to change, and they won't be static, and hopefully it'll be a bit live, and it reflects the conversations that are happening in the neighbourhood at that point in time. So if I hit this back button, it'll take me back to that menu, and the next section on there is Insight. Now this is the bit that I'm most interested in, and it's possibly the bit that we still need to go away to improve and develop. So this is basically what's happening in Marsh Green, and this should be quite live, this information that comes through. You can select the voice, whether that's the resident, a councillor or member of staff, and it will just give you a little bit of a soundbite of what's happening in Marsh Green. The idea is in time that this will connect into a deep listening tool. So this is about extracting information from all our touch points in our services. So whether that's members' inquiries, complaints, our participate engagement system, a range of different things that are going to feed up. We'll then use an AI tool to understand and analyze that. And then some of that information will find its way here. And really that should be a live, ongoing feed of information that we use in part of this profile. Okay, let me just head back. Just underneath Community Voice, you've got asset maps, and there's two sections for this. There's the asset map that we pulled together initially in Marsh Green, basically identifies the assets in the area. It'll tell you the different asset types, whether that's library, health, education, or a community asset. There's way more assets that we know in Marsh Green that is in here, so we're looking to expand on that. One of the things that we do have, if you've got a particular asset and the asset name and you want to know more about it, you can click on the website URL and it should take you to that particular area, and it'll show you that information, and it feeds quite nicely in. Just full screen again for you. And then similarly, if I go back, this is new. This has only been pulled in the last couple of weeks. So we've got a business map. So this takes information from some of the business information that we've got as an organisation. It's not every business, but it's more the trusted businesses that we've got in the in the borough, linked to some of the work around social value. So we've got business name, very similar again. You can click on their website. I think that just helps if you wanted to do, if you were commissioning a piece of work and you needed to know the businesses in a particular area, it would give you that information. It also has section name in terms of what they do as well, which can be quite helpful in just trying to understand kind of the business types in that area. Okay, if we go back, there's other then information that's more traditional. So you've got things like breaks down to population, ethnicity, religion, all that kind of breakdown by different types of heading. So if I click on, for example, household income, that'll give me a breakdown of household income within Marsh Green. So for example, medium household income in the particular area of Marsh Green, 17,500, quite significantly below the median income as well. For those of you in customer experience and support, we use this information to drive income maximization products, which have been hugely successful in supporting our most financially vulnerable people as well. So that's a bit more of the traditional data aspect to it. And then I just wanted to touch on Community Needs Index. So if I select this, Community Needs Index, this is something that's been developed by our research partner, 3NI. And they've been doing a lot of work with national government actually to understand kind of profile areas in terms of where they might need support. But it doesn't look at deprivation, it looks at assets as well, so it's much more balanced. And what it actually does is looks at each area and sub areas within that neighbourhood and talks about, well, what support have they got and what they might need. So anything that is ranked 1, it needs kind of a bit more support. Anything that's a 10 is kind of the other end of the spectrum, doing really well. There's a little section here that talks to you about how that's broken down. So there's a breadth of information in that as well, and there's huge amounts of data that feed that data model that we've not pulled in here. We've just pulled in the headline information. One of the things we don't want to do is drown people with data. Okay, let's go back. I think that's it in terms of talking you through the different aspects of it. One of the things that we're really keen to partner with you guys with is understand how you might use it and make it as valuable to you. I think this is a tool in your toolbox. It's not the only thing that you do to understand communities. There's nothing better than getting out there and actually listening and understanding what's going on in communities. But what I don't want to do, and perhaps what's happened before with other sort of insight or data products, is we deliver this stuff, it sits on a shelf, it doesn't really get updated, or it gets updated once a year, and it's always quite retrospective looking. So any ideas, we're all ears, engage us. We haven't got a monopoly on all the best ideas, so really looking forward to working with you and shaping it further. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean and Rosie. And that's brilliant, giving that overview. Hopefully people can see there how different it is in terms of, you know, some of the stuff we've done previously. And as Sean and Rosie have said, we want this to be a tool that you use in your day-to-day work. So you might be thinking, oh, I've never worked in Marsh Green before, but I'm going to. So you could look at this just to get a bit of insight. Or actually, you might be working alongside a community group. And again, you could bring this to have a deeper conversation. So actually, in the past, where we've looked at the data as a service, developed a plan and then gone into a community, we see this as a tool for a deeper conversation, not something to deliver ourselves. So this will be resident facing as well as partners. So residents will be able to access this. So you might say, actually, this is the strengths in the area. You know, you sat with a group. This is what the data's saying. What do you think are the solutions? So it should be a tool that helps you to kind of live out those missions and to really look at our 6 ways of working as well. But as Sean and Rosie said, you know, we want your input, we want your videos uploaded, we want this to be a place that connects us all, that gives loads of those examples. So I know at the end of the presentation, I know Rosie and Sean are going to give you some dates of opportunities where you can actually feed in. So again, hopefully that'll be useful. I'm just keeping my eye on the time again, Mike, because it always goes quicker than you think, but I'll give a quick example of Higher Falls. And then I think we'll go to questions. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on this, but I just wanted to really quickly bring to life some of the work that we're delivering in Higher Falls. I'm not going to go through all of this, but what we're proposing is we're going to do another session maybe in September where we start to bring to life lots of the neighbourhood working across the partnership. So we'll go into more detail, but I just wanted to give you a flavour. So we started working in High Falls in a different way, really, quite deeply about 18 months ago. I think the VCFSE organisation there was saying they were having a real challenge. They didn't feel listened to. So we said, right, let's try and do something a bit different. So the organisation HF Works are really trusted in that neighbourhood. They deliver services to children right through adults. So they're an organisation that the community trust. So we said, actually, let's start working together in a different way. So we said to Liz and Chloe, who head up the organisation, so like previously, if we looked at data, we might say, oh, there's X, Y, and Z issue, so we'll do this drop in and that drop in. But instead of doing it that way, we said, actually, you tell us, Liz, what are some of the main things that your residents feel are challenges in your community? So they said, actually, there's a real issue around hidden homelessness. So lots of people caring for each other, looking out for each other, but people sofa surfing. So I met a lot of residents up there where there's a 1-bedroom flat, but there might be 3 of them sharing the flat because they're technically homeless, but people are kind of supporting each other. So we said, well, why don't we try a housing drop-in? So we brought together housing, the homeless team, and tenancy support, etc. And we did a drop-in. And at the first one, we had about 27 residents come. Like, I don't know if anyone across the virtual room has done drop-ins before, but I know I've got experience of doing it in my previous role. I'm a social worker by background. And if you put something on from a council perspective, you often wouldn't get that high number. But because it was Liz who would engage with the residents and ask for it, we got a really high number. So we do that as a monthly drop-in now. She also said there was a challenge around people not claiming the right benefits. So we did income maximisation. Again, we're getting about up to 70 a month on that. So again, really well engaged. So again, it sounds really subtle, the difference, but if we kind of listen to what people want, we also then get good input in terms of the residents attending, which is better for us in terms of that engagement with services. The other thing we're finding is because we're going regularly, we're also building that trust. So that opens doors on a lot of other things. So again, when you look down that list, this isn't just about one thing either. As we said in the principles, it's about looking at that whole community and getting an understanding of what's working well and what isn't, and working alongside. So another example is our drug and alcohol services. So I spoke to a few residents who were kind of at that point where they were wanting to start their journey onto prehab and into detox. And actually, what we reflected on is if you want to do that and you're a Higher Falls resident living on Higher Falls, you have to actually go into the centre of Lee or to here for your prehab offer, which is quite challenging, you know, if you're starting that journey. So we said, actually, Liz and HF Works deliver a mental make and mingle session on a Monday where residents come. It's dead creative, it's kind of dead supportive, everyone works together. And there's some residents who attend that group have had previous experience of drug and alcohol services, and some that might want to go on that journey at that point when they're ready. So we said, wouldn't it be really good to do some co-design with that group, obviously with their consent? So our With You services are going down, doing some co-design with that group and saying, actually, what could a different offer look like for the residents of Higher Falls? So really starting with resident voice and building from there. So again, a really good opportunity. The final thing I'll just mention is the procurement opportunity. So again, one of the challenges that Liz kept saying is that what a lot of residents find is like, from a council's perspective, we have a prime provider, a big organisation that deliver our housing repairs, who then subcontract to a number of other professionals. Some of the experience was actually sometimes we're not delivering to the best effect in terms of some of those services. People turning up late. Sometimes someone coming to, Liz had her own example where someone came to do some plastering, but they said, oh, there's a leak. But they said, oh, well, we've come to plaster. So they did the plastering. Someone then came to paint, so a separate subcontractor. And then because there was a leak, we've ended up having to do it again. So that's kind of one example where we don't always kind of provide the best services that we want to. And obviously as a council, it's sometimes difficult to listen to some of that. But instead of Liz kind of complaining about that, she came up with a creative idea. And she said, what if? So she knows 2 local builders who are like quite small outfits who were from the estate, from Higher Falls. We also have a relationship with DMR Training, who is a construction training company who are funded through Greater Manchester Combined Authority. And obviously Liz has all the relationships with residents. So how about we looked at something creative where we had a partnership between HF Works, the two building providers and the training company. We look at actually people on the estate who are currently not in employment but are keen on a job in construction. We can train those up. As a council, we can start to be creative and look at actually procuring or subcontracting some of the repairs on that estate in a different way, so that kind of collaborative can deliver some of that. So we're providing employment. That's going to impact on people's emotional health and well-being. It'll impact on their financial resilience. It's really lifting that community. It's giving people kind of that hope and trust in us as services. And it's really proactive and creative. So I don't think we'd have come up with that as an idea, but it's interesting when you ask residents and the community sector what they think. They've got loads of brilliant ideas. So again, just a few examples. We're not quite there yet, so you can imagine there's lots of different hoops to jump through, but we're trying to see, could that be a reality? So again, lots of examples in terms of how we're just kind of working in a very different way. And again, a lot of people on the call will be thinking, oh, wanting to put their hand up, I'm doing some of this type of stuff in my community or the communities where I'm working. We want to wear it. We want to start gathering these examples. So that was just a quick example. The next couple of slides, Mike, I'm not going to labour at all, but just if you move on, just to say that you might, across kind of when you're working out and about, you might hear things like live well mentioned and pride in place. We're going to do another session later down the line on this, but I just wanted to let you know that for us, progress with unity in our missions, that's what we're delivering as a partnership. GM Live Well absolutely speaks the same language as us. So GM Live Well is the same as Progress with Unity. Pride in Place, which is a 20 million pot in two of our communities. So Marsh Green, Laithwaite, Plattbridge and Springview. Again, for us, that's just a way of us delivering Progress with Unity. So we're not seeing all these different things that come from regional and national government as separate to what we're delivering. Everything we're driving absolutely is Progress with Unity, but the funding, the connections from the Live Well stuff that we're getting and also Pride in Place just gives us that opportunity to connect the funding to driving our missions. And as I said, for Pride in Place, for Live Well, they're speaking the same language. They're talking about empowering our communities, community power, working alongside, not doing two, working with. So it's all together. So if you hear some of these things bandied around, just to give you a reassurance that we are connecting it all together, it's not separate things. I'm going to pause there because Rosie wants to talk about next steps, and then I think we open for 10 minutes for questions. Mike, if that's okay. Rosie.
Yeah. Okay. So as Claire's referred to, we're hoping to get a couple of future lunch and learn sessions. But what I would say is if you are interested in shaping the neighbourhood profiles or testing them out, just drop me a line, or if you think there's any data missing that we've not thought about. As Sean said, we don't have the monopoly, so please get involved. In fact, and we'll do another session in autumn around the sharing learning and like real life examples from neighbourhood working. And then just to finish, to say it isn't just for one team to do, it's everyone's responsibility. I know you'll all be doing some of it in your day-to-day work anyway, but yeah, it's kind of on us all to come together. So yeah, any questions?
So Mike, you found to take the slides down so at least we can see a few more people. I hope people have found that useful. We are going to be going out speaking to people, so we want your honest feedback. Hopefully we've gauged stuff right. Hopefully you think the two tools that we've shared are useful, but we want your honesty in terms of what is useful, and if there's any kind of room for development as well, please either put it in the chat, put your hand up now, speak to us outside. We want this to feel like it works for everyone. But I don't know if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask while we've got 10 minutes at the end. Mike, how do you normally do this?
Yes, in terms of questions, you can either raise your hand if you want to put a question in the chat, you can do, and we'll come through to it. I know Rosie and Sean have been picking up as we've gone through. Just while people are thinking about that and thinking if they've got anything to ask, I suppose one from myself is, will this tie into some of the Our Town directory and stuff as well? So will there be those voluntary groups and that chance to even to volunteer actually yourself as a member of staff if you want to use your community connection days? Will that build into the
so at the minute there's a separate piece of work looking at more of the detail around what was community book, so we're trying to link the two things together. So what the neighbourhood profile will never be as a community book because it's so difficult to keep that up to date. So the reason why Sean, when he was sharing, has put the asset, but then the link to the organisation, it's because that will always be up to date. So this is very much a tool that gives you a full breadth. But yeah, we see that development of, I don't know what it won't be called the community, but whatever that will land, the two things will connect across. So it'll be, and that's what we're trying to do. All of this is under the umbrella of Progress with Unity, and there'll be a suite of different tools that you can dip in and out of, and they're all kind of being developed in parallel. But behind the scenes, we're trying to connect it all together, so it's one suite for staff. But we want your views, we want the input. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Kieran, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, especially on the construction side, because I have actually had some dealings early on with this IFO group. Who actually manages the procurement, the project management, and more importantly, the health and safety for these projects? Because I did actually have an initial chat with the two groups you mentioned, and to be honest, they haven't really got the rudimentals even of understanding the CDM, and it is a specialist area. So I understand we're not preaching at people or making them work in a certain way, but there are legislative reasons we do what we do sometimes. So it's who's actually checking the council's covers on some of these jobs.
Just to give you reassurance, Kevin, wouldn't do anything without a process. So we absolutely wouldn't put our organisation at risk. So with the procurement opportunity, when we've started to talk to them, you're right, there's lots of gaps really early doors. So the first stage in that won't be to give them money to deliver. It'll be about building their capacity and ensuring they've got what they need to do. So we're kind of looking at the minute, is there some creative way we can test some stuff out to build their kind of knowledge and skills and ensure they are legal before we do anything.
To be honest, this was why I was approached, to be honest, and that's why I'm asking the question, because that was probably 18 months ago now, and I've never really spoken to them since. And one of the initial observations was, apart from the obvious checks that we normally do to show due diligence, it wasn't just on the procurement. On the health and safety side, you have to prove competency yourself and all the workers, and you have to vet them. And that wasn't really, I know we did sort of offer to prompt people in the right direction. But certainly from my side, their offer's not been took up. And I'm just wondering who has done it, because there's not that many people in Wigan Council who deal with CDM. So I'm just wondering who's actually covering it.
Still on the person to help. So we've had a bit of a delay in actually getting it up and running while we've been doing some of the other work. And obviously, you know, we've got a big piece of work going on in terms of the housing repairs and stuff, so we've kind of put a bit of the delivery on hold until we can work with that organisation to do some of those things. Your name is still in the frame, Kieran, if that's all right, to support with some of that. And I suppose we've just been having some of those conversations in the background in terms of what we need to do for next steps. Don't worry, we're not doing anything illegal anymore, and that's not what we're advocating, but yeah, creative idea to do something a bit differently. Is that all right?
Well, remains to be seen.
Thanks, Karen. Bits to work through and to make sure.
I mean, I suppose that's the point, though, isn't it? Is some of these ideas are creative, and we're not suggesting we put our organisation at risk, but we're suggesting we explore the opportunities, and there'll be hoops to jump through before we kind of allocate funds to these things. But it's about how do we prepare. So in 5 years' time. Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Kieran.
Sorry, that's where I'm coming from. It's been proactive, really, is to make sure that they've actually got the boxes ticked before we, as an authority, if you like, give them unrealistic expectations. Because, I mean, I've been very strongly, and the contractors I'm involved with are very pro-social value, and we do a lot of social value. But it's when I sort of check from the CDM side, Wigan Council was very remiss on the social value side. We were telling people we could do things, but we weren't actually making sure we were covered legislatively, and this definitely falls into that category at the moment.
Yeah, so we've been having conversations with business as well across the council. So we're not going to do anything that's not legal. We've kind of been speaking with Andrew and others about how we make it possible, but we've not progressed it into funding going across because of all those things you've described. But it's, as I said at the beginning, really, some of these things are quick wins. So the drop-ins that we've got, we could set them up straight away. But actually, that procurement example, and there's one around the ethical framework for adult social care as a parallel example as well. they're going to take years to get up and running. But actually, it's stuff we've never ever tried or done before because we just keep dealing with the crisis that's in front of us. But actually, if we can try and empower that community, work alongside and provide those good jobs, redirect more of our spend back into the local community, that's going to make a long-term impact. So whereas the drop-in was more of a, we can set that up in a month, this procurement thing that we did start the conversation on 18 months, we keep, oh yeah, we can do it, oh no, we can't because of X, oh we can do it, oh no, we can't because of Y. So we're finding our way through it, but that's all right, because even if it takes us 3 years, the impact that that'll have long term, and that for us is what Progress for Unit is about. It's about the quick wins. It's the same with the drug and alcohol example I gave. We had the first conversation about that about 8 months ago. We've still not got an offer, but we're doing the co-design work, which takes time because we're working at the pace of trust. So I suppose that is part of the principles of neighbourhood working, is some of this stuff doesn't happen overnight, but to change the absolute way we're working is not going to happen overnight, is it? So we've got to keep going, keep trying, keep testing it, keep sense checking. I think you're right that it's legal, it's statutory, and just keep going. So you know, that's our collective responsibility.
To be honest, I totally agree with the principle. And one of the things, I mean, I'm a contract manager for the council. We're doing a framework at the moment, and very much what you're saying is in tune with what we're looking at, is to try and get smaller contractors enabled and, if you like, more in tune with the legislative and the financial side. But obviously, like I say, it's a long process.
Yeah, absolutely. We need your help with us.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Sorry, Sean.
Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on some of the comments in the chat, if I may. Jonathan Williams has put a really good comment actually around Tirefall's case studies, but also being the third sector response, and a strong third sector response being symptomatic of inequalities. And I think we want to strengthen that third sector response as well, but also think about how we support communities. So the example of food banks is a really good one, isn't it? But actually, what we want to do is make sure that households, residents, families have a sustainable footing. So that might actually be getting them on the right benefit that they're entitled to. And then before that, getting even further upstream, getting them into employment, making sure their health is good. It's that whole system approach that hopefully some of this work helps to tie in some of those issues certainly around the neighbourhood, to support actually the whole system approach to improve outcomes for residents.
Spot on, Sean. And I think that's why we want to look at place as the vehicle to delivery, and why our 2 missions are absolutely key, because we know actually if people are going to lead their best lives, they need a secure accommodation, they need access to funds, employment. That is going to help people on that pathway. So if we just keep reacting to the kind of symptoms of some of those inequalities, so poor mental health, poor physical health, we're never going to address those kind of deep-rooted inequalities to provide that equity. So Jonathan, your comment is absolutely spot on, and for us that's what Progress for Unit is about. It's about absolutely getting into our neighbours, understanding those inequalities, giving people the best opportunities that we can to prevent the need, so to absolutely addressing those wider inequalities. And all of us 5,000 staff across this council have got a role in doing that. And how do we kind of see our neighbourhoods as the place to really kind of uplift people's kind of opportunities in life? So yeah, good question.
Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Just conscious having a look at the time, so I'll